Let us go now into a time of worship.
This is a song from the musical Into the Woods by Stephen Sondheim. It's called Children Will Listen.
Good morning. I'm Jürgen Korbanka, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. My pronouns are his, him, and he. Come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You're welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, you are welcome here. No matter what you have experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, or some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society.
Good morning, everyone. the Reverend Laura Young, and it is good to be together today. I have some difficult news to share with the congregation this morning. Earlier this week, our community learned that former member Tom Kimball completed suicide. Tom was beloved by many in this congregation. He served on the board of directors, and his family was active in our religious exploration program until they relocated out of state in 2016. His family is grieving deeply right now, and we hold them in our hearts at this time. It is never easy to speak of suicide, but to not speak honestly of suicide is to relegate it to the shadow. Tom's death is tragic in that we never want anyone to feel that taking their own life is the only option that they have. If you or anyone you know is struggling emotionally, mentally, spiritually, with depression, please reach out to someone close to you or to myself. You do not have to walk that path alone. Tom's death is also a very complex one. Each of us has a shadow side, and it has emerged in the last few weeks that Tom's shadow was a particularly dark and troubling one. Evidence has emerged that Tom sexually molested children during the course of his lifetime and was sexually inappropriate and abusive towards many women. These accounts are numerous and documented by authorities, and survivors were seeking to hold Tom accountable in the weeks leading up to his death. It is sometimes suggested that we not speak ill of those who have passed. However, to hold silence in the face of Tom's behavior would be to abandon those who have had the courage to step forward. We cannot be silent in the wake of these revelations about Tom. When someone has had the courage to come forward, we believe them. This is in keeping with our Unitarian Universalist values and human decency. For those who loved and adored Tom, I know this news is bewildering and deeply distressing. We may ask how we can love someone who harmed others so deeply. And your shock may cause you to feel disbelief, sadness, and anger. Your feelings are normal, and this is okay if you struggle to make sense of this, because it does not make sense. And there are no easy answers or paths forward here. I ask that as a community, we care deeply for one another today and in the days to come. I want to remind you that I am here for you, and I encourage you to reach out as needed. I ask that we do not discuss this during our social hour today, or use the community listserv or Facebook groups for processing. I have also disabled chat for the duration of this Zoom service. This is for the health and the well-being of everyone in our congregation. We do not always know where each other's wounded spots are, and it's important that we be gentle and careful with one another today. And we'll be hosting a Zoom listening circle this coming Tuesday evening, and all are welcome. I am also putting in the chat box how to connect with crisis support phone numbers, as well as my email address if you would like to speak with me privately. Thank you. There are no words that I can offer for our call to worship today that felt appropriate for this time and this place. And so I ask that we just sit together for a moment in silence. Thank you. Let us sing.
Our song is number 1068, Rising Green. The words should appear in the chat box. You're welcome to sing along, though you will remain muted. My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak, the sap doth run in my veins, and lifts my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. With the stars, with the stars, where the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weavings of time without end. My sight as deep as the sea. Within my heart sounds the measures of old, that of love's eternity. That of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Ringing my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
We will now light our chalices together. If you have one at home or a candle you'd like to light. And we have our chalice lighting words put into the chat. We light,
this.
mute yourselves if you like. We light this
Like
chalice,
this chalice
For the
warmth
of love, for the light of truth,
truth
for the,
and
for
the energy
of action.
And the lighters in the kitchen.
Oh.
We'd like to extend an especially warm welcome to those of you who are visiting for the first time. We're really glad that you're here, and we would love a chance to get to know you. Our greeter today, Tammy, is going to now drop our connection card into the chat box for any of our newcomers so that you can become better connected to our community. This is a caring and supportive community. If you find yourself in need of support or care or just a listening ear, please also fill out our pastoral care card that is also being dropped in the chat box. And a member of our pastoral care team or myself will be in touch. You can also find the pastoral care card on our website. All of our services are intergenerational, To find out more about our religious exploration programming, please contact Rebecca Britt, Director of Religious Exploration. Her email address is now also in the chat box. We do have a lot going on here at South Valley, and one of the best ways to stay and get connected is via our weekly newsletter, Happenings. You can sign up to receive our newsletter by sending an email to Lori Quigley. Her email address is on the website. And you can also check out our midweek events on our community calendar. Although we are physically separate, we are still connected. This afternoon at 12:30, there is a meeting of the CUPS group, which is the UU Pagans and Earth-Based Center group. And if you'd like to join, the Zoom link is in the chat box now. There are also many other meetings going on during the week, and I encourage you to check out the community calendar. I'm going to ask Kristen May to step up to the proverbial mic and offer us an update on the auction here at South Valley.
Okay. Hi, I am Kristen. I am the auction coordinator this year. I'm excited to be going on vacation with you all at the SVUUS auction on Saturday, November 14th at 7 p.m. Let's see, can you hear me? I hope. I'm unmuted now, I think. If you didn't hear what I said before, I'm the auction coordinator. My name is Kristen. The theme this year is on vacation. If you're new to SVUUS, the auction is our biggest fundraiser of the year and one of our biggest, most fun social events we hold. This year, we are holding the auction online, but our auction team has been working really hard to make sure that all the pieces we love are still going to be there. So we're still going to have the music from our auction band. They're going to be performing several numbers. Costumes are optional as always. In addition, you can add, like I have here, a digital background or decorate your space where you are going on vacation. We're going to still have our live auction during our main auction event. And you'll still be able to bid on parties that people are holding. So be thinking of things that you can donate, maybe a virtual party or something that you can do socially distanced. We'll have our silent auction as well, as usual. So if you have items that would be appropriate to donate, if you keep an eye on that Happenings news email newsletter that comes out, there'll be details on how to drop off items for the silent auction. That will also be done online. We'll be using a software that will allow you to bid online through the night of the auction. It'll also be opened up a little bit earlier, which is kind of nice. You can kind of start your bidding, and if you've used eBay before, put in max bids. So that will bid in increments up for you, so you don't have to keep going back to it. So that's kind of a fun addition. We'll also be having our usual raffle. We've already got some really great raffle prizes for like the King's English Bookstore, some restaurants, some places of business. There will be no food this year, but in its place, we're having a really cool swag bag that you can come before the auction and get. It'll have some fun party things for the auction. And then in addition, our bar team has been coming up with ideas for cocktail kits. So themed cocktails to go along with our auction that you can make at home. So we really are trying to capture the spirit of the auction and all the pieces that we love. It's going to be a really fun event. I would encourage everyone to go to the auction website, which is auction.svuus.org. If you go to, keep an eye on the Happenings, the link will be there. We've lowered the price for the auction this year. It's going to be $10 for adults and $5 for the children's auction, which, by the way, the children's auction is the night before Friday the 13th, also at 7 p.m. And yeah, just buy tickets as soon as you're able and start donating there, and look for more details about how all the pieces work in the Happenings. Thanks.
Wonderful. I'm glad we still get to have our auction. Always something to look forward to in the year. Thank you, Kristen. We will now share the warmth of community. You're invited to unmute yourself and say hello. It'll be a little chaotic and we can just say hi. Good morning.
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 Hi, South
Glad to see you all.
Morning, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Who I
So
see?
glad you came, Sharon.
I see everybody.
Uh-oh.
Always good to see everyone and hear everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Britt. I'm your Director of Religious Exploration. My pronouns are she and her. I'm so excited to share a story with you today that's about listening to your friends and listening to your heart and yourself. But before the story, I want to share some exciting things that are happening in the RE program, the Religious Exploration Program. So this fall, instead of focusing on classes, we're focusing on project-based learning for most ages. The project this October is kind of based around creating as a community. So for the next 2 weeks, we have a lot of exciting stuff happening. This Sunday, today is Sunday. Today, I'm going to be at South Valley at the building from 1 to 3. We have a project going on called Your Creation at South Valley, which is where we're going to have mystery bags today that you can come pick up with all sorts of arts and crafts. And each bag kind of has a project that could be what you could do, but you can do anything you want with it. So come by from 1 to 3 to pick those up. And then the next week, you'll be able to return your creation at our Community Creation Day. That's also happening from 1 to 3 on October 25th, next Sunday. We're going to have outdoor events that are physically distanced. We're taking all the right measures, and we're going to have different activities that one family at a time can do. We're going to have projects. We're going to have arts and crafts. We're going to have prizes, and that's brought on by me, the RE program. Rev Laura is going to be part of it, and Cups is also helping with an event. So I'd love to see you from 1 to 3 this afternoon to get the creation bags, and next Sunday from 1 to 3 for Community Creation Day. So with that, I'm excited to share this next story that's all about listening. This is a story called Listening with My Heart. It's by Gabby Garcia. It's illustrated by Ying Hu Tan. It's a story of kindness and self-compassion. Esperanza's tummy fluttered as she practiced her lines on the porch. Today was the class pet play. Waiting for Mama to walk with her to school, she paced back and forth. Then she spotted a heart-shaped rock. Esperanza picked it up and showed it to Mama as soon as she walked out. I see you found a little treasure, said Mama. She rubbed its rough surface and felt a twinkle of joy. Maybe it's a sign. For what? Asked Mama. Esperanza thought about the class play later that afternoon and wondered what it would be like to be in the spotlight. She said, to put my heart into everything I do. At that moment, she heard a scratching and a soft cry. Meow. Esperanza peeked under the stairs and spotted a kitty shaking and shivering. No Mama in sight. She scooped the kitten out onto her lap and cuddled her. She's all alone. I think she's hungry. Esperanza reached for her lunch bag, pinched off a piece of chicken, and offered it to the kitty, who gobbled it up. Mama, I think the rock is a reminder to spread kindness and love. That's what we do when we listen with our hearts. I think you're onto something, said Mama. Can we keep Cleopatra, please? Asked Esperanza, who'd already named the kitty. Queens are always welcome in our house, said Mama. If she's still here after school, we'll take her in. At school, Esperanza was more focused on the play than math or reading. Clutching her script during recess, she noticed Bao sitting alone on a bench. He was new in school this week and didn't speak English. She wondered if he felt lonely or scared. Esperanza found a soccer ball and kicked it over to him. A smile spread across Bao's face. He stood, popped the ball in the air, then bounced it between his knee and his head a few times. Dude's got moves, thought Esperanza. They spent the rest of recess giggling and making up hand signals. Afterwards, Esperanza borrowed Miss Owen's English to Vietnamese dictionary. She wrote friend in Vietnamese and drew a picture of Bao and her and placed it on his desk. Esperanza rubbed the rock in her pocket. Listening to her heart made her feel more peaceful inside. Finally, it was time for the performance. It was too late for Bao to be in the play, but he stood at Miss Owen's side as the stagehand. Excitement bubbled as Esperanza awaited her cue. Esperanza walked onto the stage. She tripped just as she was about to say her line and splattered across the stage. When she got up, Esperanza forgot her lines, so Miss Owen whispered them to her from backstage. Heat rushed through Esperanza's body as all eyes were glued on her. She wished she could disappear. I ruined the play, Esperanza thought, rushing off stage as soon as she'd finished her part. I messed up in front of everyone. She tucked herself in behind some props so no one would see her. Esperanza noticed her body shaking and her face still burning. She took a deep breath, and tears streamed down her face. Esperanza dug the rock out of her pocket. It was cracked and lopsided, just how she felt. Esperanza touched her hand to her heart and felt the disappointment. A few minutes later, Bao walked over and handed Esperanza a drawing of her with the word friend written above it. Esperanza nodded. She realized she hadn't been treating herself like a friend. Esperanza realized this wasn't the first time she'd been unkind to herself. At the soccer game last weekend, she'd missed the ball that swooshed by her head and they lost the game. Nice work, a player from the other team yelled, and others laughed. Esperanza thought that she had let her team down and was the worst soccer player in the world. Thinking those thoughts made her feel worse. At curtain call, Esperanza reminded herself she hadn't ruined the play. She'd had an accident, and accidents happen to everyone. Listening with her heart wasn't just about spreading kindness and love to others. It was about giving it to herself too. I can be a friend to myself, thought Esperanza. When Esperanza got home, she decided to do some of her favorite things. She zipped down the hill on her bike and then spent the afternoon painting at the kitchen table. She also got the hug she needed from Mama and some cuddles from Cleopatra. The end.
Thank you for that reminder, Rebecca. This community, our church, and its many ministries are only made possible by the gifts of your time, talent, and treasures. Many of you give monthly to support the work of this church, and for that we're grateful. Your gifts help ensure we're able to live our values of love and justice in the world. Part of our ministry at South Valley includes sharing the Sunday worship offering with a charitable organization that aligns with our values. And for this month, we are working with the Utah Food Bank. Food insecurity is on the rise in the midst of the pandemic. So as you are able to give, you will help South Valley as well as people who use the Utah Food Bank. Millions of pounds of food are given through them. South Valley uses Givelify to collect online donations during worship, and Tammy will put that link in the chat. It's a live link, you can give directly that way, or you can go on your phone and download the app. Thank you for your generosity and your dedication to justice and love. Our offering words are now going to be put in the chat box, and you're invited to say those words with me. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
That's interesting. We can't spotlight ourselves. Oh well.
Listen and gentle be present to all you've ever kept close in your loving heart. Try to remember the moments when you felt clearly the gift to be truly alive. Often look up and see the splendor of life suspended in your heart and mind, so longing to be forever alive in this moment stillness. The thrush echoes your delight, write the colors of hidden longing, and dreams wet woven in silk and rainbow wonder. Shadows appear at your doorstep, but don't you worry. Life's lessons have blossomed now. This moment, immense with a stillness that makes you listen and want to be listening and want to be listening. For all that we have received and all that we have found the courage to give, may we be truly thankful. May these gifts be a blessing to South Valley and the Utah Food Bank. I invite you now to join me in a time of meditation reflection, or prayer. And Hillman has written the following: we are all on a journey together to the center of the universe. Look deep into yourself, she writes, into another. It is to a center which is everywhere. That is the holy journey. First, you need only look to notice and honor the radiance of everything about you. Play in the universe, she writes. Play. I haven't heard that word in a long time, I think. Tend all these shining things around you, the smallest plant, the creatures, and the objects in your care. And be gentle and nurture. Listen. As we experience and accept all that we really are, we grow in care. We begin to embrace others as ourselves and learn to live as one among many. I invite you now just to root down, place your feet on the ground, and to enter in a time of silence. And after that time of silence, Ricklin will lead us out with music.
By Mary Oliver. Do you have time to linger for just a little while out of your busy and very important day for the goldfinches that have gathered in a field of thistles for a musical battle, to see who can sing the highest note or the lowest, or the most expressive of mirth or the most tender? Their strong, blunt beaks drink the air as they strive melodiously, not for your sake, and not for mine, and not for the sake of winning, but for sheer delight and gratitude. Believe us, they say, it is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in a broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this rather ridiculous performance. It could mean something. It could mean everything. It could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life."
Every Sunday since I began with you, I have spoken about the importance of discerning our values and our commitments as Unitarian Universalists in these troubling and tumultuous times. I have tried to delve beneath the surface and move quickly through the niceties and to challenge you and me and us about our current thinking, because there is nothing nice or easy about the times we are living in. And I have tried to connect with you on a deeper level such that when the time comes for us to act, we will be able to do so faithfully and with deep trust in one another. The election is just over 2 weeks away. And I would like for us to have a frank conversation about what this election is likely to look like and how we may be called upon as a congregation to respond. For while we all hope that the process will unfold smoothly, that outcome is highly unlikely. And we need to be prepared for the uncertainty that is ahead. So I'm going to be breaking silence with you on this and to speak plainly. Things are not going well in our democracy right now, and we're unlikely to have an outcome that is clear on November 3rd or even November 4th. And we cannot predict the shape of that uncertainty. There may be significant political chaos and even violent uprisings. People of color, members of the LGBTQ+ community, and religious minorities have already been targeted and will continue to be targets. This is not an alarmist attitude, but one based in the observed reality of the violence already happening in our communities and in our nation. And it is even broken out here in Salt Lake City and in Cottonwood Heights. When members of a white nationalist militia plot to kidnap an elected official and put her on trial, and the President of the United States refuses to commit to a peaceful transfer of power, we need to pay attention. And we need to believe them rather than dismiss them as deluded or somehow not serious. Militias are armed and emboldened, and they have plans, and these plans are not in line with our Unitarian Universalist values. And we must speak plainly about this. In September of this year, author, speaker, activist, and public theologian Brian McLaren wrote an article that challenged the notion that the United States is a two-party system. He argued that while we do have two major political parties, Republican and Democrat, that our electorate is comprised of actually 5 distinct voting groups. 4 of these are likely familiar to us, and the 5th, not so much. The first 4 are aligned along the political spectrum as this: traditionalist, conservative, liberal, and progressive. The traditionalists do not particularly feel at home in our world these days. The rapid rate of change leads them to want to return to a world of old-fashioned values, such as honesty, decency, respect, service, and sacrifice. And they tend to emphasize family and faith as central to their meaning-making process. Next, we have conservatives. Conservatives believe in a strong national defense, free and fair markets, individual freedom, privacy and property rights, and the need for fiscal restraint. Then there are the liberals among us. Liberals champion Americans' growth and global leadership, but are suspicious of corporate greed. They promote human rights and decency and advocate for pragmatic government solutions to complex problems. And lastly, there are progressives who, like traditionalists, are uncomfortable with how things are. But progressives are eager to courageously face climate change, honor the dignity and diversity of all people, preserve and protect local economies, while still being a good global citizen. And they seek to humbly tell the whole truth about our complex history, especially past and current injustices. Now, these 4 groups with a shout out to the independents among us, have comprised our electorate for many, many decades. And our Unitarian Universalist faith has been home to folks across this spectrum. Though in recent decades, as we have more fully embraced the social justice stance informed by the marginalized and oppressed, our denomination has been a little less welcoming to more conservative folks. And part of our work as Unitarian Universalists is to remain mindful that being theologically liberal is not necessarily the same as being politically so. Traditionalists, conservatives, liberals, and progressives all share a common understanding that the rule of law and the democratic process are core to our collective well-being. The maintaining of free and fair elections and a peaceful transfer of power are among our shared values. And for many decades, we may have disagreed with one another vociferously, perhaps, about how to approach and solve our collective problems. But each of the members of these four groups understood that underneath our differences, we held a common concern for the maintenance of our democracy. In 2016, a new I don't know why I can't do that word today, a new part of the voting groups emerged in the United States. Authoritarians. Brian McLaren defines authoritarianism as a political stance that seeks to centralize power in an individual, a party, or a cabal, with four primary tactics. 33% of a given population is susceptible to authoritarian tactics. And that is what is happening in our country right now. A third of our population has moved decidedly to that of an authoritarian stance, draining traditionalists and conservatives of their accustomed political base. Those who participate in authoritarian thinking unify and activate their followers behind a leader. They focus on radically dividing society and insisting on absolute loyalty to a regime or to a leader. They distort or divert from the truth so that whatever a leader says counts as truth. And they suppress dissent, especially of protesters, opponents, and the press. The current president of the United States has engaged in all of these activities and tactics during the last 4 years. He demands absolute loyalty. He encourages racial hatred and religious intolerance. He lies boldly without consequence, and he attacks his opponents, his protesters, and the press. Donald Trump is the most overtly authoritarian president our country has ever had. And we cannot stand by and let this happen. We must refuse to let authoritarian rhetoric convince us that our siblings across the political spectrum are to be feared. They are not the enemy. Authoritarian power grabs are. Traditionalists and conservatives have been forced to make an agonizing choice over the last 4 years to ask whether in their hearts do they follow a leader and abandon their values, or hold on to their values and face being pushed out of their party and political office, and therefore be unable to act to protect and preserve the democracy that they share a belief in with us. Our democracy thrives with political diversity. And while our UU faith may not hold much religious appeal for our traditionalists, that does not preclude us from working together to preserve our democracy. Unfortunately, religious liberals have often had difficulty speaking boldly from a theologically grounded place, because the very tenets of our religious faith as religious liberals promotes and honors the diversity of thinking. And our proclivity for the separation of church and state is a dearly held value. Thus, the dominant religious voice in the United States is theologically conservative, self-assured, and pervasive. That is the observation of Unitarian Universalist author and professor of religious studies, Paul Razor. This is the point he makes in his book, Reclaiming Prophetic Witness. He calls upon us as Unitarian Universalists to have difficult conversations about how our liberalism has too often resulted in a don't ask and don't tell approach to religious diversity, rather than as a starting point for truly learning to live into our pluralistic promise of sharing faithful space in the midst of real and important differences of opinion about politics and religion, faith, and democracy. Paul Razor argues that if we could work to build more skillfulness in this area, we would be able to unleash our collective prophetic voice so that the religious minority would be exposed for what it is, a minority opinion, valid in its own space, but no longer emboldened to grab the whole of the public religious square. Paul Razor further writes, quote, "Religious liberals seem cursed to live with the tension between energizing hope and the temptation towards paralyzing cynicism. But we must recognize that cynicism is a luxury of privilege, a negative spirituality that in the end only feeds the forces of empire. We can maintain our hope and be true to our own religious ideals if we remember that this very dissonance, this tension, which so often frustrates us, can be creative as well as destructive. It can fuel the passion to question, the courage to be prophetic, and the faith to hope," unquote. What we need now, in this time, is faithful voices from the religious left to speak boldly and faithfully about the world we are seeking to co-create. As religious liberals, which again is not necessarily the same as being politically liberal, we must examine our fears of engagement, our fears of messiness, and our fears of difficulty. We must shed the ideas and the practices that elevate intellect and rationality as superior or even separate from embodied faithful wisdom. And we must shed our negative fascination with perfectionism. Those are attributes of the white supremacy culture that have shaped our religious dialogue and our landscape for far too long. It has moved our hearts away from the deeper work, the greater joy, and the brighter hope that is at the heart of religious liberalism. Now, I know this is a hard call in the midst of a global pandemic and fear of an uncertain election process. But now is no time to stand by. We must speak boldly and well. And we must have the necessary and difficult conversations about who we are as a faith community and how we will respond. There is a very real possibility of an unrest and violence will erupt as we await the election results. And again, I am not being alarmist here. We should expect and plan for unrest and decide individually and as a faith community how we will respond and what sorts of risks we are willing to take. This is a moment in history where our faith truly is on the line. I wish I could outline for you the likely scenarios we will face here in Salt Lake City, along with a list of supplies to purchase and groups to send funds to, and a comprehensive safety plan. But I can't, because we really don't know what to expect. I can tell you that I am in conversation with our interfaith partners here in Salt Lake City and my UU colleagues located in red and rural states about the risks and challenges we are facing, and that we are having the necessary and difficult conversations to ensure that as things unfold and shift, we know how to connect each other with resources and support. And I can tell you that our board, our staff team, and myself are also having these difficult and necessary conversations so that we can act quickly and effectively whatever scenarios come our way. Now, you may not feel up to this, and that's okay. Sometimes I don't feel up to it either. However, when I feel at a bit of a loss, I try to remember that in each era, Unitarian and Universalist congregations and ministers have sought to be on the right side of history. And I try to remind myself that they too felt inadequately prepared to respond to the times and the challenges that they faced. I think of the congregations of the 1850s and 1860s that faced the threat and the outbreak of civil war and the fight to end chattel slavery. I think of the congregations and the ministers of the 1910s and 20s that endured the First World War and a global pandemic. I think of the congregations of the 1950s and 60s that sought to bring an end to Jim Crow laws, and those in the 1970s that dared to bless the unions of gay folks, and the congregations of the 1980s who provided sanctuary to undocumented immigrants from Central America. We have mighty ancestors to draw wisdom from. We have a strong legacy of advocacy to build upon. And we have a vibrant faith to nurture our souls and guide us in this time. We may not have a choice about our context. These are the times we are in. We do have a choice about how we respond. So let's respond faithfully and well, such that future Unitarian Universalists here in Cottonwood Heights, Utah, may draw upon our stories and our wisdom when their time to rise up and respond arrives, as it is now for us. May you be well in the midst of all that is in this day. Amen.
Our closing hymn is 362, Rise Up, O Flame. And if we were meeting in person, we'd sure try this as a round. I think it amount to disaster now if we tried a round. So I'm just going to play it once, and it'll remind you of the first clip that Laura played, and then we'll sing it through 3 times.
Now extinguish our chalices together. Cami will be putting the chalice extinguishing words into the chat. You have your own flame at home. Let's do this. You can unmute if you'd like as well. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of community, the light of truth, or the energy of action. We hold each other in our hearts until we meet again.
Rick, you're muted.
This is also from a musical, this postlude. It's from the popular musical Dreamgirls, and it's called Listen.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you to each of you for joining us today in our worship. As you go forth today, may you be gentle upon the earth with one another, and most especially to that internal heart within. May you befriend yourself now and in the days to come with a deep and abiding love for all that is. May you be well, and amen. We'll be taking a short break, 10 minutes. If you'd like to join for our community social hour, you are welcome to do so.